The colony of South Carolina, founded in 1663, was first settled on and around a narrow peninsula of land where two great rivers flow into the ocean. The city that was built here, starting in 1670, was named Charleston, in honor of King Charles II. Charleston eventually became the fourth largest city in the English colonies and one of the wealthiest. In contrast, the colony of North Carolina never had a large city. The first colonists in South Carolina arrived by ship from England late in the year 1669 and settled near here on the banks of the Ashley River. They established small farms, traded in furs, and exported forest products for wooden ships as the settlers in the north were doing. Starting in the 1680s, persecuted Protestants from Europe immigrated to South Carolina to farm and find religious freedom. The flat, swampy South Carolina low country was perfect for growing rice, and it was mainly this crop that brought them prosperity. Later on, planters in South Carolina raised a plant called indigo, from whose leaves a valuable blue dye is derived. Eventually, indigo became a major export of the colony as well. Rice was grown on huge plantations, and it required a large number of workers to produce. As a result, thousands of African slaves were brought in, so that by 1699, there were 4 black slaves for every white person in the colony. Slavery on this scale resulted in the creation of a powerful upper class made up of extremely wealthy planters, many of whom lived in and around Charleston. This mansion, called Drayton Hall, is a good example of a wealthy South Carolina planter's house. It stands on the banks of a river and once overlooked the plantation's huge rice fields. Planters who lived in enormous houses like this one liked to show off their wealth in other ways, too. In fact, visitors to a plantation house usually had to pass down a long drive along which stood row after row of slave cabins that were intentionally placed there so the visitors would be impressed with how many expensive slaves the owner possessed. Those seen here at Boone Hall Plantation are only a third of the 27 cabins that once stood here. These cabins were for the use of household and skilled craftsman slaves alone. Cabins of the much more lowly field slaves stood further away from the house.